Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to our Esports Talk episode. This time around, going to be all about Overwatch and definitely some debatable topics out there. Now, this is actually the premise of the entire series. Of course, we're here to share daily news as much as possible about many of the esports out there, but I would love to debate several issues as well, especially when there's not too many roster changes out there, not too many team changes, and that's what this episode definitely specializes with. We're going to play with you guys, and for you guys a couple clips about xQc and a couple announcements out there, especially the latter. The second one, we show you some debatable topics about potential controversy out there in the scene. The first of which, I guess in some big news earlier this week, we were gone at a conference. We are now back and sharing some previous news. xQc has now officially left the Overwatch League. He will not be returning to that. That does not include the Overwatch World Cup, but the Overwatch main stage, that league he will no longer return to, and here are his reasons why.
You know, the marketing boost at the beginning, because they announced that they're participating in it. Pog, it goes up a little bit, it stagnates, then it goes down. I won't be part of Overwatch League anymore, because I was part of this, and I got dropped right here, and I won't be part of this, and I won't be part of this.
And why this might be a small debatable topic is because, of course, the future of Overwatch. I know, especially coming from the conference we went to here, learning more about esports itself and the growth of the future, many people out there have a high hope ever since the Season 1 of Overwatch League for the future of that iteration. Whether the game's going to be simplified down for a viewership standpoint somehow to make it a little bit easier to watch, or other issues as well. With that Overwatch League in development, many people see things like League of Legends, Overwatch, maybe even a CSGO, or other, of course, Fortnite being a big one, as a prolonged future esport. But with this clip, it seems that maybe xQc sees some things that other people don't see, or maybe he's predicting things others might not. He, of course, did not give a timeline as to when that saturation would occur and when that downfall would also occur, but it leaves the questions to be asked. If you're a former pro player out there in a certain esport, do you have better insight? What would the future of Overwatch League be? And that's definitely in question, but more so in question is this second clip, actually happening a couple days ago. It's Kephrii, a pretty well-known streamer, xQc a bit more so, of course, a more well-known name in the Overwatch scene himself, actually comes out on stream and talks about Kephrii's tweet on screen for all of you, asking, of course, the new DC team for a tryout. Now, we do not see this too often, especially when it comes from popular streamers or popular content creators taking to Twitter to ask for tryouts. They might ask for promotions or for brand sponsorships. This is a bit out of nowhere, with this one saying, of course, asking DC, their new lineup yet unannounced, for a simple tryout. Now, here's what xQc had to say, and I think to start off the bat as well, many players out there definitely agreed with xQc in this context of what his response was to Kephrii's tweet.
Contenders will be a huge financial step back for my successful streaming career. I have a wife, a home, bills to pay. I need to go back in time and join. But with all gladly prove myself in a tryout. The thing is, right now nobody's in tryouts. It's very hard to get tryouts, right? And he says it's a step back for my successful streaming career. Yeah, life is about trade-offs and sacrifices. Life is about taking some time off of something that you enjoy or whatever, for something bigger, to reach bigger goals or whatever. Do you think people in Contenders have a plan B? They don't even have a plan A, dude. They have nothing, and they're still dedicated their entire life to this Contender shit. And this guy comes out of nowhere with financial stability, with a stream, with a big structure behind it, everything perfect, and he's asking for a shortcut. That's insulting to everyone that's finding their asses off. Nobody has a plan A, plan B. This guy has a plan A and a plan B, and he wants to go past them. That's up, dude. That's so.
And this is what I love about the show. Of course, we can actually ask you guys to reply in the comments what you think about this. You can disagree with me, you can agree with me. Please leave your comment down below what you think about the situation, because coming from a CSGO background, from that scene over there, and maybe other scenes can agree with this, maybe they align with xQc's thoughts as well, it's definitely unique to see this standpoint. Kind of not necessarily a put down, but definitely a little push back of what Kephrii wanted here. Of course, to kind of jump Contenders series, all those, of course, very hardworking young up-and-comers, as well as those young pro players working for tryouts, working scrims, working to get those connections and earn themselves through the main stage. Of course, many, if not most, of those main stage athletes made it through the Contenders series themselves, and so it makes sense for a little bit of pushback for people to say you are not qualified, you have not gone through the gauntlet, you've not gone through the long run to actually earn your spot on the main stage. That does make sense, but from a CSGO perspective, we would almost enjoy seeing this. There's not many huge content creators or huge streamers in the CSGO scene currently, but it would be amazing to see someone from an ESCA Mountain Dew League or someone from a lower pro league actually get a chance somewhere out of nowhere for a team. But again, that can be taken out of context, right? I think of a person like Stewie2K, if you guys have heard of the rise of him, often known as a pug star. He obviously got his first chances with a team like Cloud9, who was experimenting in a new roster, and they signed this kid out of nowhere, and he ends up being one of the world's best players. And so I wouldn't take that as the same level of play as this. You know, Stewie wasn't taking to Twitter to ask directly teams for these tryouts, but you can expect behind closed doors, he was obviously trying to get his foot in the door somehow. So it almost makes, from my own perspective, you almost cannot blame the guy for using his background, his streaming popularity, to actually try and get a tryout. And if in fair play, if he actually is somehow good enough, which given his abilities and what the feedback is given so far, you don't expect him to be past that contender stage. He's never even gone there himself. But if he has that talent, or he shows some kind of, you know, ability to actually play with that team, why not give him the chance? If he of course fails on the main stage, I understand, then he won't last very long. So there's definitely two sides to the story. I agree with part of the pushback, but when you look at the context of a guy using his popular fan base to actually get somewhere, maybe past that fan base, can you really blame him? And again, I pass that question off to you guys. But also, in some bigger news out there, we actually have Pharah changes still on the PTR, not live in the game yet, but they might be very soon. And these are some pretty big changes. First off, starting with the concussive blast, not too big of a change. Cooldown reduction from 12 seconds to 9 seconds. I think definitely going to be a buff for that, but not in most situations. So I think we're going to avoid there. The main changes, obviously, to a rocket launcher, the first of which an increased fire rate. You know, it was kind of a staggeringly slow reload, or kind of a repressed fire rate there, almost 1 full second or just over 1 second in between each fire. Now increased fire rate, but also with that means it's going to be more direct damage and less splash damage. So although of course it's going to be, so far from what we've seen so far from assumptions, it's going to be of course for shields as well as barriers out there, going to burst them down a lot quicker. But for smaller targets like Brigitte and her shield, it's going to be probably a big buff in her direction, which also might be why the PTR is going to change her shield, her health as well, down from 600 to 500. So that could be of course exactly why they reworked that. They saw the smaller character rework going to be needed, because Brigitte already tough enough as it is. But with that being said, it is the question, especially when it comes to tier play. Me being a lower tier player, of course, this might be seen as an obvious buff, but when you go to players like Valkyrie, or you go to players like Seagull, they've already openly and publicly stated this likely will be a nerf to most for abilities. Although you will have, of course, an increased fire rate, that means more shots to actually have that direct damage. It does mean you have to have a higher accuracy as well. And again, we're going to see varying opinions until this actually plays out more and more, but it does seem to be kind of course, a big balance change depending upon which tier you actually fall in. So I do like, at least at the very least, Brigitte also receiving a nerf because of this. We're going to see how it plays out. Of course, Torbjorn also receiving his PTR updates as well. We're going to see how it all does play out, guys, but it's going to be cool to see exactly which way it does sway. I think majority opinion out there does say probably a slight nerf to overall abilities, but again, there's definitely some balance changes here that you can see at least Blizzard is trying to make right with all the changes they do. And also very lastly as well, the knockback increased percentage there as well. So it pretty much means during that rocket jump, you can actually knock yourself even further back. That's how I took it, at least. So that could be a buff to those abilities. So overall, rocket launcher, is it a buff? Is it a nerf? That's the overall question. Again, we're going to wait how it plays out to see exactly what happens, and hopefully some more roster changes coming soon, guys, as we approach the unannounced date for season 2. I cannot wait. But that's going to do it for Overwatch news as of today. I love the debatable topics, guys. Keep on sending them in if you guys can, or leave a comment down below what you think about today's topics. As always, my name is Jake. I'll see you all very soon, and I'll see you then.